new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode number 36 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or any of the audio platforms if you have not already. Listen to it on the audio version typically. Most use Apple or Spotify, but we're on iHeartRadio, also Stitcher, Twitch. I think not Twitch. We're not on Twitch. We're just on YouTube, and then all the other audio ones. Not quite on Twitch yet, but if you haven't, make sure you are subscribed. This is actually a special edition of Arkansas Preps Weekly. We're going to preview the volleyball state tournament, and of course, the state championships are on Saturday, but the state tournament starts on Tuesday. And with that, we're going to bring in Jeff Halpern, our volleyball expert. And Jeff, I know you and I have done a lot of different things together for multiple outlets. We've never done a podcast together, and I have actually never done a volleyball podcast. So this is the first time. I've done over 500 episodes in my life, and this is the first time. So looking forward to this. I'm glad you came up with this idea, and looking forward to talking about some teams this week.
I'm glad to be doing this. Volleyball is a sport that flies under the radar screen. It's the coaches really appreciate the coverage, whether it's been this outlet or previous outlets that we work for. And I feel this is an exciting time. This is their big week of the year because it's state tournament time, and like I said, we've got 64 teams and a total of 5 classes competing for state championships this week. And we want to take this time to preview each classification and tell you who we think are the favorites, who are teams to watch, and some of the players that if you're going to, whether it's Harbor, Van Buren, Huntsville, Paris, Hackett this week, or you're going to Hot Springs on Saturday, that you might want to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, this is definitely a West heavy. Actually, I say West heavy. It's all on the western part of the state. So there's going to be plenty. If you're in Van Buren or in any of the NWA, basically the River Valley NWA, for anywhere in that area, there's going to be a lot of volleyball going on this week. So that is the place to be. And then, as you said, Hot Springs, as they will be, and those games in Hot Springs, the state championship games, are going to be on PBS, so you can watch those if you're not going to be at Bank OZK Arena. Well, I'll go ahead and kind of go a little in-depth on myself, or a brief in-depth synopsis of myself, since some people might be watching for the first time. So I usually cover football, basketball, softball, a little bit of baseball, and then ever since Jeff, when did you start doing volleyball coverage? 2022 or last year?
Yes, 22. It was. Actually, I covered it. My previous outlet I worked for, I covered the state finals, and then through that 2022, then I did it. I did it from start to finish. I was doing weekly rankings and doing players to watch and everything.
I couldn't remember if that was 2 years ago that you had started that, but of course, since you and I were working together there, I would follow all the stuff. And I've read Paul Boyd's stuff for years, of course, too. He does a great job covering this game as well. And so I get more and more intrigued by it. And it's obviously a growing game. Softball, we've talked about that during the spring, how it's such a growing game, and volleyball is right up there too. And it's become one of the ones that I've just been more interested in more and more each year. And of course, now that I can watch them on TV, I get even more intrigued. So let's go ahead and let's talk some volleyball right now. We'll start here in Class 6A. So for those that are first time, I was going to mention myself just a second, just for those that don't know me. So like I said, I normally cover football, basketball, and softball with a little bit of baseball. So I do want to thank you all for tuning in. I know that probably more of you know more about Jeff than you do me. Of course, see Jeff's name on all of the volleyball articles. So that's what I normally do. So volleyball is kind of a new thing for me. I know somewhat of the rules of the game, but again, I'm going to do my best here. And then Jeff is going to, I'll just kind of guide us, and Jeff will give most of the key details. But starting in Class 6A. So, Jeff, it's been really a Fayetteville Invitational over the past few years. Last year, there were some that thought that they might take a step back, at least maybe at the beginning of the year, with all that they had lost from that 2022 team. Of course, you had Reagan Hart coming back. That was the player of the year last year. And Fayetteville's still a contender, no question about it. But Southside especially, we'll kind of focus on the West here for a second. Southside's kind of taken that step as far as being the top dog in the West. Now, I know they lost to Northside a couple of weeks ago. They were shorthanded, though, didn't have one of their top players. Now they take their full team into the state tournament. So talk about Southside a little bit and just kind of the matchup that they bring.
Southside is from a talent standpoint is clearly the best team in the state. Now some people might say, well, why are you having number 3? Well, they lost to Baptist Prep a couple weeks ago in the Conway tournament, and they lost to Northside. So understandably, I put Hackett above them, then Benton leapfrog them. But they got a great trio. You got Lydia Pitts, you got Mila Neal, who's their setter. You got Gabriella Dupree, who's on that short list as far as your player of the year candidate. 2 years ago, Southside was a very young team. They made it to the finals. They got swept by Fayetteville last year. They fell to Conway in the semifinals on Conway's home floor. This year, 3 of their 5 losses have come to teams in Missouri. They swept Fayetteville. They've beaten Shiloh Christian, who's one of the favorites in 5A there. Yeah, they had a hiccup there a couple weeks ago, losing to Northside. It was their first loss to Lady Bears since 2006. Lydia Pitts was sick that night, but they rebounded. They beat Bryant, who's finished runner-up in the 6A Central Thursday night. So they're without a doubt the team to beat this year in 6A.
You look at over on that bracket there, and of course Southside's got the bye, and then they get the winner of Cabot Northside. Well, I know that they'll probably tell you, and look, it's the state tournament. You're going to play whoever's in front of you, but I think it's probably pretty obvious who they are rooting for a little bit in that one, just because they'd love to get another piece of Northside.
I don't think there's any secret about that. I mean, Northside at the start of the season, I thought they were a team that kind of the sleeper team, one to watch here. But the funny thing about the 6A West is you had 4 teams: Northside, Bentonville West, and Harbor that all took turns beating each other. Well, since then, Bentonville has emerged as the team that you don't want to face it in the state tournament. They won 14 of their last 15. They beat Fayetteville Tuesday night there. They got Tori Otter, who's going to Providence. They got Eddie Bollinger. They've got Maddie Hopper. They're really coming on this time of the year. Fayetteville is a solid number 2 team. Unlike 2 years ago. 2 years ago, they had a team that was one for the ages with Kenny Phelan and Reagan Harp and Maddie LaFata, Brooke Rockwell. A lot of those players went on to sign Division I scholarships. Last year's team was led by Reagan Harp and Quincy Schaefer, who did a remarkable job replacing Kenny Phelan as a setter. This year's team is good. They're not great, but I wouldn't sleep on them. I mean, I know Jessica Phelan, when I talked to her earlier in the year, she said last year's team kind of had that swagger that they knew had that swagger. This year's team has kind of struggled to reach that. But given their history, I would not. If you want to ignore Fayetteville at your own risk.
You mentioned talking about Northside that coming into the season, you had a feeling that they would be the sleeper. Now they've lost. I know they were swept, actually. I know they lost 2 of their last 3 matches. If I'm not mistaken, they were swept in both of them. How do you think? I know that the South Side, that win, it almost seems like forever ago now. Just considering the way that they finished the regular season, how do you feel that they'll fare? I know, and of course, they're going to run into a buzzsaw in Southside, even if they do beat Cabot. But how do you see them now that they finished the regular season the way that they did?
Honestly, I have a hard time seeing them go. If they beat Southside again, that's going to go down as one of the biggest upsets. Upsets, not just in volleyball, but in Arkansas high school sports. Because you got
because Southside will have their full team now, right?
You got to love the way Southside is played all year. I mean, every time I get asked Natalie Throneberry for a quote, she talks about how much this team is buying in. She talks about how at times in practice she likes to make the team uncomfortable, so when they hit adversity in the match, they know how to react to that. And there was a classic case early this month. They were They played Bentonville. They were down 2-1. They rallied to win that set in 5 with the 5th set going 2018. So they got that tells you about the character and the toughness Southside has, and what it takes, and knowing what it takes to win.
Well, let's talk about the Central for a second. So you've got Conway that is going to play either Harbor or Jonesboro. They are the defending state runner-up, lost to Fayetteville last year. But you look at the other teams that have really kind of been talked about, looking at Little Rock Central and Bryant. Central, they've lost 5 of their last 9, and then Bryant 4 of its last 6, including 2 consecutive. Conway, certainly no surprise. I mean, probably, as far as the state tournament and being the 6A Central champion, the favorite as far as that conference. But what do you think of Little Rock Central and Bryant since they've been on a little bit of a downward turn?
Little Rock Central to me has not been the same since Bryant swept them at Boone Fitzpatrick Fieldhouse a couple weeks ago. And they early in the year, you were excited about Central, especially when they beat Benton to win the Little Rock Christian Invitational. I vaulted them from 17-2 in the statewide poll, but they've kind of taken a step back. They lost to Jonesboro. Now, granted, Jonesboro is a team that's kind of played better than some people expected this year, because they were terrible last year. They have a new coach, Cannon Grossbuck. She's been on maternity leave. James Locke has filled in since the start of October, and they're back in the. I saw them play Bryant a few weeks ago, and they gave Bryant all they could handle in a 4-set match there. And I was talking to Locke afterwards, and he said, we're playing better, but we've got to start. We're playing better. We're giving teams all they can handle, but we got to start. We got to start winning. And certainly for them to beat Central on Tuesday night, that was a huge win. That was a huge win for them. Conway's a very good team. Bryant earlier ended their 45-game winning streak against conference opponents. And Conway, returned the favor Tuesday night by beating the Lady Hornets to win the 6A Central again. They got good players like Ren Jones, who's an outside hitter. Bishop Floyd is a very good libero. Madden Kabantuk, I'm not sure if I pronounced her name correctly. She's one of their in London, and her sister London are two very good setters.
Head on down to 5A now. So I want to bring this up because I noticed a quick teaser. This podcast will probably drop a little bit before your rankings do, but I noticed in your rankings you had mentioned about how that every single team last year at least won back-to-back. There's some that are on 4-peats and 3-peats and stuff, but last year you had every single team that at the very least repeated. Now, we're not going to have that this year, particularly because you've had teams move up in classification, either move up or move down. We see that case first off here in Class 5A. You've got the back-to-back 4A runner-up Shiloh Christian, who probably would have a state championship if Brooklyn wasn't such a powerhouse. And Shiloh's put together another impressive season. And they were part of that competitive equity factor that got bumped up to Class 5A. They won the 5A West. So I want to get your take first and foremost. Just kind of talk about how this Shiloh Lady Saint team, kind of like the football team has done in 6A, this volleyball team has just continued to win as it did in 4A.
Shiloh's got a lot of talent. I saw them play at the Hot Springs Lakeside tournament, which they won there at the end of September. They beat Brooklyn in the semifinals. They beat Cabot in the finals. They tied Marion in pool play, which had a share of the 5A East title. You got Bella Bonanno, their libero, who's committed to Ole Miss. You got a great outside hitter in Chloe Blessing. You got an excellent setter in Layla Creighton. You got an excellent middle blocker in Aubrey Pender. I'm glad in 5A that you have Shiloh and Benton on opposite sides of the bracket, because they met in the gold bracket finals at the Conway Lady Cat Invitational a few weeks ago, and Benton won. I remember afterwards I was emailed Nathan Bodenstein, Shiloh's head coach, and I asked him for a comment on that. And I said to him, and when I responded, I looked at the bracket and I saw that them and Benton are on opposite sides. I mentioned that to him. He said, That's true, but there's still a lot of volleyball left to be played here, and so they are a very talented team. And I'd be surprised if they don't make it to the finals. And yes, look who's on their side of the bracket. It's Valley View, who's won 16 state titles under Margie McGee. You don't, and that should be a fun semifinal, because I know I've talked to Margie a couple times, and she's really excited about her team. I saw them at Lakeside, and she was a little disappointed because they were going through a little mini slump there. But they've seen the caught a second win here. They won the conference title. I know she's very excited about her team there. If they meet Shiloh in the semifinals, that should be a fun match right there.
Valley View is always going to be in the mix. There's no question about that. You said, is it 16 title games that they've been to?
Or 16 state championships.
So they've got 16 state. That's incredible. I knew it was an unfathomable number. I didn't know it was that high. But you've also got Marion in the East. I know they finished off strong. They've been standing pretty between that top 15 and your top 25 poll. But definitely Valley View. I know, like you said, they just seem to be that team that's been really hot right now. Talking about from the West, Greenbrier. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Greenbrier did not
Central.
Or Greenbrier's in the Central. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. The West was what I was thinking about with Shiloh. The Central, Greenbrier didn't even make the state tournament last year, right?
No, they didn't.
I didn't think they did. And they went 16-0 in conference this year. So just kind of talk about the how they've just taken multiple steps forwards in 2024.
Well, for starters, they got an excellent outside hitter named Madison Crum, who's already committed to Missouri State. Last year, she was an all-state selection. She had over 500 kills. I know this year. I know Katie Huff. It was 2021. They reached the semifinals. They lost. 2022, they had some injuries. They kind of took a step backward. Last year, they missed the state tournament, but this year they really stepped up there. I mean, the Central doesn't have the dominant team like Benton, or like Benton in the South, or Shiloh in the West, or Valley View and Marion over in the East. But they took care of business there. I mean, Mount St. Mary is a good team. Little Rock Christian's they're good teams. They're not great teams, but I mean, the Lady Panthers certainly took care of business going undefeated in the Central.
I think that's probably the biggest question there as far as the Lady Panthers from Benton, the 5A South champions once again. Their only losses, I believe, if not mistaken, Little Rock Central, Bentonville, and Brooklyn. So certainly nothing to shake a stick at there. Can anybody stop the Lady Panthers? This Lady Panthers that we're talking about can anyone stop them from three-peating?
Oh, I think I'll be there Saturday, but I mean, if I wasn't there, I'd definitely pay to see them play Valley View or Shiloh. I know after a couple weeks ago, I watched Benton beat Little Rock Christian, and I told Michelle Shupik, the coach, I think she and Shiloh are probably the two best teams in 5A, and she said, she said, well, keep in mind, Shiloh had to play 3 sets against Harbor and Baptist Prep to get to the finals, whereas we didn't have to, and that probably, we were a little fresher when it came to the state finals there. But I mean, Benton, you got one of the best players in the state, Isabel Lagaman, who's committed to LSU. Her older sister Abigail signed with South Carolina. She was state tournament MVP 2 years ago. And Isabella does just about everything well. She sets, she hits, she blocks, she digs. There's, you don't see her come off the floor. There's Parker Stearns, who's an excellent outside hitter. She hits the ball with authority. Drew Hudspeth is another great player. Benton's played a very tough schedule. They swept Conway the other night at Conway, which is nutty. And Michelle Shupik said she can't remember the last time that they went in the Buzz Bowling Arena and beat Conway there. So they do. Benton does just about everything well. They play an excellent schedule. So they are going. They're going to be battle tested.
And down in Class 4A, we've mentioned Brooklyn a couple of times. Everybody is chasing the Lady Bearcats. It seems like, Jeff, how many didn't they go before Brooklyn won back-to-back last year? Wasn't it like 3 or 4 that they went to that they just couldn't get over the Valley View hump? Is that how it went?
I'd have to go back and look. I know in 2021 they lost to Valley View back when Valley View was in 4A.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the case. Yeah, and Brooklyn has just been, I mean, they've been a powerhouse for a long time, but they've been the standard of Class 4A for the past 2 years. And I've been really impressed with Wynn this year. I've seen a lot of things that you've written about. I think just about every week when we are publishing new content for volleyball, Bree Party and Ella Reed are somewhere mentioned, whether it's in the rankings, whether it's in top performers. You see those a lot. But on the other side of the state has been one of the, especially over the past week or so, the drag out fights in the 4A1 between Prairie Grove and Gravette. Those have been really, of course, the last 2 Gravette has gotten the upper hand on, but those have been some really, really intense matchups between those 2 4A1 squads.
Oh, because Prairie Grove dominated the conference all year and they swept Gravette, and then they get in the district and Gravette picks them off and gets the number 1 seed for the regional, and then Gravette picks them off again and gets the number 1 seed in a bye for the state tournament, whereas Prairie Grove, now they got to play a first round match against Pulaski Academy. They should win that, and then they would turn around and win in the second round there. But it's I wouldn't be surprised if they meet again if they run each other. I wouldn't be surprised if they run each other in the semifinals.
And that matchup too. So those 2 possibly meeting in the semifinals, and Brooklyn and Baptist Prep meeting in the semifinals. Again, we're speaking hypothetically. We're not trying to get too far ahead here, but you obviously know way more about all of this than I do. But just looking at those 2 semifinal matchups, those are that might be as a whole the most competitive semifinal in all of the state tournament. I'm talking about just as far as from top to bottom, both sides, just with how well both teams or all 4 teams have played. Is that fair to say that might be the most competitive semifinal in all of them?
Oh, I've especially if Brooklyn and Baptist Prep get there. Now, fairly interesting story. Brooklyn and Baptist Prep were in Spike Fest at the beginning of the year. They put Brooklyn and Baptist Prep in the same pool. Now, luckily, because there's 24, the gold bracket there had 16 teams. Both Brooklyn and Baptist Prep were able to get into the gold bracket. Brooklyn won pool play. The Baptist Prep turned around and beat them in the semifinals and wound up beating Valley View for the championship there. Now, I know this is the first year the AAA's gone to regionals, and I know that matchups are rotated. I wish you had Brooklyn and Baptist Prep on the opposite side of the bracket. They've been the 2 best teams in 4A all year, and the reality is one of them is not going to make it to Hot Springs on Saturday.
And I think this is kind of one of those ones where, and I know that especially if you're maybe the teams on the opposite side being referenced, if there's any semifinal matchup that people would say, well, this is possibly the state championship, that would probably be it. Just because, and I say that out of the respect for both of those teams, just what they have done over the past few years. You've got Baptist Prep. Are they the 3-time defending 3A champs, or is it back-to-back? Back-to-back. So either way, back-to-back 3A champs, and like you said, have had another phenomenal season in Class 4A. I know Coach Spoon probably loves that competition there just because they can do that. Now, just like Shiloh can in Class 5A, and as Shiloh proved that by winning the 5A West. So I also wanted to – or go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn Baptist Prep are pretty similar in the fact you look at their schedules. They're not afraid to play teams in great teams regardless of classification. Brooklyn Baptist Prep has played both teams have played Conway. Brooklyn beat Benton earlier in the season. Brooklyn's beaten Valley View. They've also beaten Marion. Baptist Prep got to the semifinals in the Lady Cat Invitational. They played Bryant. They lost to them. They're willing to take on anybody, and both teams are willing to take on anybody and everybody, and they'll beat a lot of good teams in 5A and 6A.
Also wanted to ask you, I've seen a lot about Pottsville and Mena. Now, I know that, they might not be quite up to par with these teams might not be quite up to par with the Brooklyns, the Baptist Preps, and maybe some others that we've discussed. But I've seen Mena mentioned a lot. I've also seen Pottsville mentioned a lot. So what do you think that maybe these two could bring? Of course, you probably like, Pottsville, playing Arkadelphia, then Mena on the other side playing Pocahontas in the first round. You probably like it, at least those first round matchups, but then from there is when it gets really tough.
It's going to get tough there because you're looking at Mena's going to have to play Gravett, which is really coming on strong right now. Pottsville's been a very good team. Has been a very good team all year. Has been a very good team all year. Unfortunately, they're on the same. They're in Brooklyn's half of the bracket there, so that's going to be very difficult right there.
Then heading on down to Class 3A, which it seems like no matter the sport, 3A and of course you have this when you have a multitude of teams, but Jeff, it just seems like everything, especially in football with what we saw last week. I see it every year in softball. It's just so deep. You look at this bracket right now, Episcopal, they'll play anybody. Conway Christian's good all the time. Mayflower, I know they may not have Mayflower, I believe, they're the 4 seed out of their region this year, but they've typically had good teams. CAC has really come on this year. You've got Mansfield in Class 3A now. That is the 4-time defending 2A champion. Now, they don't have Allison Edwards anymore. They don't have Kinsley Ward. They've still got some talent, but, obviously not the team that they might have been over the past 4 seasons or so. But Harding Academy, I know they're another one that you've mentioned, but really other than Paris, CAC has been the hottest team in Class 3A recently. You look at that loss that they had to Harding Academy, that 3-2 loss was a couple of weeks ago. I think it was October 17th, and they hadn't lost since late September since that time. So, now that Paris doesn't have to worry about the Baptist Preps, they don't have to worry about the Hacketts. You really like what they bring in, but CAC has been a really, really hot team.
They have been. Last week, as somebody from CAC said, "Hey, we should be ranked." And we've lost to Valley View, we lost to Pulaski Academy, we mentioned a couple other good teams. I asked them what their overall record was because I didn't get any information from them at the start of the season. Then they turn around and go ahead and win the regional. And I finally said, okay. Last week, when I looked at what I was doing last week's rankings, I didn't see anybody who I said, okay, they deserve to fall out. This week was a little different. I felt like, okay, now they deserve to go. Now they deserve to go in there. And I put them at number 20 this week.
And looking at Paris, you mentioned the couple of CAC's understandable losses, as I like to call them. Brooklyn, Greenland, Greenbrier, Episcopal, and Hackett. That's Paris's losses. That's a pretty solid handful, if I do say so myself, especially Brooklyn and Greenwood, just showing that there's that handful of teams that it doesn't really, whether they're in 2A, 3A, they'll play the 4, the 5s, in some cases the 6A. So I don't know if Hackett played any 6A schools last year, but I think I remember them doing that last year. And I know we'll talk about Hackett and 2A a little bit, but Paris, man, talk about them playing up.
Paris is a very good team. Of course, they won it in 2021, and they've gone through a couple. Jordan Devine was their coach when they won it in 2021. Then she stepped down. She's now the junior high coach at Clarksville. Josh Garcia Hart was their coach last year. He stepped down. Now Jerry Fulmer, who's been an assistant, he's taken over, and they've had an excellent season, winning their district, winning the regional, going 30 and 6 this year, and going 36 this year. And this is at the start of the season. I said at the start of the season, I'll say it now. 3A is wide open, and that's because the Baptist Prep moved up, Hackett moved down, and then you bring in Mansfield, which is the 4-time state champion in 2A. You bring in Conway Christian, who Mansfield defeated last year in the 2A final. Lavaca, who Mansfield beat last year or 2 years ago in the 2A final, also moved up, but they got bounced in the regional there. Crowley's Ridge is a team that's got great tradition. Episcopal, I had them in the rankings a couple times. They've played a lot of teams in higher classifications and and have taken their lumps. So hopefully we'll see how well that pays off for them now that we're in the state tournament week. And Mayflower is a good team. They got an excellent libero and Miranda Leslie.
I wanted to ask you before we go down to 2A, that one in the bottom right corner there, Conway Christian and Episcopal Collegiate, just because Conway Christian, as you said, they were in the state final last year, and then Episcopal, that's what I keep hearing when I've talked volleyball a little bit, obviously with you and a few other people. That's pretty much been what I've heard, is that Episcopal, they just want to play every top team in the state, no matter the classification. That's why I like that matchup a lot there. I think probably the biggest question is, can that tough schedule pay off for Episcopal Collegiate, or can Conway Christian make another far run as they've moved up in classification?
Yeah, and Conway Christian played some good non-conference teams early, played some teams in higher classes early in the year. Unfortunately, they took a few losses and they took a few losses and fell out of the rankings there. So I'd like to think that it'll help you this time of the year, because whether it's been volleyball or basketball, one thing it drives me nuts is when I see schools that put up a gaudy one-loss record, but they didn't challenge themselves outside of the conference. Then when they get in the regional or they get in the state tournament, they get bound. They lose, and then they have a hard time. Whether it's in the regional, they have a hard time recovering, or if it's in the state tournament, then the season is over with.
And last but not least, in Class 2A, so it's interesting this time around because, like you said, we mentioned how Mansfield moved up to Class 3A, and Hackett, who is they won in 2019 2A, won in 3A 2020. The last 3 years have been the state runner-up in 3A, and now they moved back down to 2A. And Jeff, this is the class that I just don't know that they're going to be stopped this year. And we said that I know they were ranked number 1 overall, and last year when they played Baptist Prep, and Baptist Prep ended up sweeping them. That's something that nobody in the final, definitely, I don't think that really anybody saw that coming. Maybe not even losing to Baptist Prep, with, of course, all due respect to them, but just with how much of a run that Hackett was at that time and the schedule that they had played. But this time around, you just look at it and you look at what everybody else has done, and I just don't think there's anybody else that matches up to what Hackett has accomplished thus far.
Well, last year, Hackett and Baptist Prep were pretty similar. Both of them played tough non-conference schedules. Hackett won the Fort Smith Invitational. They beat Bentonville West. They beat Southside. They tied Lakeside, who they lost to the previous week at their tournament. Hackett hasn't played the same tough schedule as they did a year ago. Bridget Freeman told me, she said, she had to adjust her schedule when the AAA announced that they're adding the regional tournament, which meant it took a week off the regular season. She had to move things around there, but they did beat 3 teams in 5A: Siloam Springs, Shiloh, and Harrison. Now, granted, Harrison is not the same team that they were a year ago. Siloam Springs is not the same team that they've been in the past, but Shiloh is clearly one of the favorites in 5A. And you look at it, Hackett won the tournament at Paris tournament. They won the Huntsville tournament. You got the Bridget Freeman's 2 daughters, Mackenzie and Michaelin, are excellent. Are just one excellent outside hitters. Mackenzie, as you know, is going to play softball at Tulsa. Michaelin's going to play volleyball at Tulsa. Caitlin Edwards has stepped in as a setter and done a great job. Lily Oxford is an excellent libero. They're hosting the state tournament. If they don't win it this year, I'd be shocked.
When you look at this, so on the other side, Marshall is going to get to play the winner of Ozark Catholic Cutter Morningstar. They've had a great year, but they just haven't really been challenged. Really, I know they won their regional tournament, but they just haven't been challenged, to the point that maybe a Hackett has. That's probably my biggest question there. England, I know, has really heated up. They won the 2A South Regional. They actually entered the top 25 poll this week. On the other side, I know Cotter has done really. Of course, Marshall got revenge on Carter recently in or wasn't that right? Marshall beat Carter in the I think the 2A North or one of those. Say if I'm not mistaken, I'm getting some stuff tied up here. Maybe that was St. Joseph.
Was 2A East.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was thinking of totally something else. I was getting my I think I was maybe getting Marshall and St. Joseph is maybe who I was thinking of. I can't remember, but what I'm getting at though,
North and England knocked them off in the finals there.
That's who. So I'm confusing everybody. It was England. It was England and St. Joseph. I was getting all my stuff mixed up there. So looking at, I know St. Joseph was one that was in the mix there for a little bit. And I'm not saying state tournament. I'm talking about just mix as far as they were in our rankings in the top 25 poll for a little bit. But just looking at, of course, I'll give you the floor there and just kind of talk about, some teams that have also made noise in 2A. But just looking at how, and you also look at everything that is on the line for Hackett in this as well. As you said, Bridget, this is her last, and it's not just about this, it's about the entire team, but that they are motivated to win one with both of her daughters. They got to do it in softball. Of course, Bridget's the assistant, and you and I both know Bridget really well. We've covered all of their daughters, and I know her more from softball as Jeff Oxford's assistant. That's when I usually talk to her mostly. But as you mentioned, Michaelin is a junior. Mackenzie's a senior. They've just got so much motivation with how the 3A championships have ended the last few years. But talk about just some of those other teams that have made noise: the Marshalls, the Englands, the Cotters, St. Joseph. There, I know for a little bit. We want to definitely give them their due credit as well.
Yeah, St. Joseph's had a good season. Has had a very good season. Had them in the polls ranked up until this week when England beat them. I watched England beat Nevada on Tuesday, and that was, to be nice. It was England didn't have. I don't think England didn't have a lot of trouble getting past Nevada. And Samantha Brewer was like, "Okay, I'm glad we won. That was nice. We won. We're in the state tournament now. We got to try. Now we get to go. Now we get to try and see if we can get." See what type of seed we get here and everything. Marshalls, be interested to see what I am not really familiar with them, but to see what they do with going into the they won the 2A East there. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Of course, Cotter got they're the number 2 seed that gets the first round bye there, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Lifeway Christian, they reached the state finals. It was back in 2021. Lost the Mans. They got a new coach. They got a new coach this year. So, be interested to see what some of these teams can do and everything. I mean, I realize the deck is kind of stacked against them because Hackett is clearly the dominant team. But you can see how well some of these teams progress, and if they can leave the season with a positive taste in their mouth.
Yeah, that's right. And that's one of those things. I think that probably, and look, I don't want to make it seem like going back to last year's 3A game. I don't want to make it seem like that Hackett was just the runaway guaranteed going to win. But I mean, I think that probably most of us last year thought that, okay, they would end the season number 1 overall. They would get over that hump. And I mean, I say that because, they did win a 3A state championship a few years prior to that. But I think that last year was really when many thought that, okay, it's really Hackett's to lose, and Baptist Prep proved everybody wrong. And I know that Baptist Prep's trying to do that in 4A now and trying to get them another state title in that new classification, as Hackett is trying to do it in 2A as well. And Jeff, I know we will have state championship coverage in Hot Springs. I know you're going to be down there this weekend. This is now, this is what I guess like you said, because you started the volleyball coverage 2 years ago. So this is going to be your 3rd year of basically camping out there during that Saturday. And as I mentioned, they can be watched on, all the games can be watched on Arkansas PBS. The folks there do a great job. I imagine our man Bobby Swafford and a few others will probably be on the call. Bobby is certainly a trooper. He usually does play-by-play on all 5 of the championship games from around lunchtime and until the end of the night, till when y'all wrap it up around 9 or 10 o'clock. So, Jeff, I'll go ahead and just give you the floor real quick and just kind of talk about what you've done for volleyball. You do the top performers and, the rankings and everything. And so just talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. Like this, the first 2 years we did the rankings, I think it got about 50 questionnaires back from coaches in all 5 classes. I think this year we got about 70. Got 70 back there, which was nice because, especially some of the schools in the 4A, 3A, and 2A. Those are the ones the 4A, 3. Those are the ones we like to get to know those a little bit better on. And this year was the first time we did the top 25 performers and we've been getting a lot of cooperation from coaches sending nominees in. I probably get about 80. Just from without going through Twitter, I probably get about 80 nominees from coaches alone there and everything. And and we always when I put them out there, I always put a note. Hey, if you have somebody who's worthy of being nominated, please send your email to me by 5:00 on Sunday so we can get them included in the list. And if coaches, when some of these coaches email me players in there, provided that they're worthy, I want to get them in because at least I know, at least they'll see it and they'll know, hey, we can, if I can send that email that helps get our players some notice there and everything. And earlier this year was Shannon Tesaro, coach at Lavaca. She had a player who running after a loose ball busted her tooth on a railing in the bleachers there. Went out, had to miss a set, came back in. At that point, they were down 2-0 in the match, and can't help and turn around, help them win. I said, okay, based on the story you're telling me, I got to put this player definitely deserves a spot on the list.
Yeah, no question about that. We definitely love to reward toughness as well. That's crazy. I had not heard about that. That's pretty wild. But you can, of course, each week, and I know we've only got a couple, well, I guess this week and next week, and then, of course, we'll have our postseason awards as well. But you'll see, if you're watching, you'll see on the bottom of the screen there, the Natural State Sports Network on YouTube as well as Facebook and X. So that's where we post, of course, the written content we'll have on our website, naturalstatesports.com. That's where Jeff's rankings as well as top performers will be, and then we'll put those on our social media as well. If you look up in that top left corner, you see Arkansas Select Volleyball. I certainly want to highlight the great folks over there. Of course, Chris Walker has been great to us, and that is why we are able to do what we do with what Jeff writes and this podcast here previewing the state tournament is because Arkansas Select Volleyball has made that possible. So a big thank you to Chris Walker and Arkansas Select Volleyball for all that they have done for us. And Jeff, other than that, man, this was fun. Enjoyed doing it. And, this is something that we're looking at. We have a goal, and even at our previous outlet, that was one thing that we all had a goal of making sports along with basketball and football somewhat covered throughout the entire season. And I say somewhat because sometimes you might have more one week than another, but that's been our ultimate goal, really, with some of the ones that we've worked with as far as making softball and baseball more known, volleyball, and we want to continue that. We want to keep this going, and so it's really good that we were able to do this. Like I said, this is the first time that I've ever done a volleyball podcast before, so definitely I couldn't have done it without you on here, no doubt about that. But no, I'm glad that we were able to do this, and we'll just be looking for your stuff in Hot Springs.
Well, I'm glad to be part of this team here. I know, initially, if over the summer, I thought things were going to go a different direction with another website. And when things fell apart there, I'm glad you were able to, get the sponsorship and bring me on here and help give volleyball the coverage it deserves. I mean, yes, this is fall, this is football season. Everybody's attention is devoted to football, but volleyball is an exciting sport. These girls play it. They deserve some of the recognition. Some of these places you go to, whether it's Conway, for example, or Little Rock Christian or Mount St. Mary, their students really get into it and make a match a fun experience out there. And and I'm sure Saturday when I'll be there at Banco ZK Arena, it's going to be fun. There'll be five teams will be crowned 5 teams will be taking home trophies as state champions, and have a memory that they'll have for a long time.
Yep, and you can recap all of that. We will have, with Jeff Stories, we'll have a photo gallery, so you can check out those and, all the MVPs and the celebrations and all that good stuff. I know Jeff's going to have a good time down there, and we look forward to following it. And also make sure, again, as I said at the top of the show, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, we do this kind of stuff year round. So hopefully one day we'll add volleyball to the weekly coverage. But right now we've got football. And then, of course, we go into basketball doing that. And then in baseball and softball, we do it all throughout the year. And last summer, we did a summer series. For those that may have tuned into that, we highlighted former Arkansas prep athletes that are starring at the next level. So we had multiple of those. And, we'll have to get a volleyball one on. I don't think I had any of the volleyball ones on last year. But as you said, Jeff, I mean, yes, these kids deserve coverage, but it's not like that, we got chump volleyball here. We got kids that are going to Power Fives. We got kids that are going to college. I mean, we got some really good teams in this state. And I think that's why that we see so many that go out of state and play that competition to show that. So looking forward to it in Hot Springs. Jeff, really appreciate it. We look forward to the coverage again, naturalstatesports.com or the Natural State Sports Network on Facebook or X. For Jeff Halpern and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you on the next episode with football.
Thank you.